If you felt you are less interested, need more quiet, or strangely disconnected from what once mattered, this video will help you understand why. Because what's happening isn't a problem. It's a transition and a normal occurrence when you are in between life phases and shifting identity. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one reason this phase feels so uncomfortable and how it resolves naturally without you forcing anything. Most people miss this part, and when they do, they stay stuck far longer than they need to. Welcome to Vortex Tribe, where we journey into the heart of consciousness, energy, and universal truths. First sign: success feels hollow now. There comes a moment where the version of success you once chased stops working on you. You can still achieve things, still move forward, still do well, but the emotional reward doesn't arrive. It's not disappointment. It's not failure. It's more like the feeling of finishing a book you've already understood. Your system isn't broken. It's just no longer motivated by outcomes that belong to an earlier version of you. This often confuses people because nothing is wrong on the surface, yet something inside feels complete. That's one of the clearest signs you've outgrown your old life. Sign 2. Emotional noise feels louder. You may notice that drama, urgency, and constant emotional stimulation drain you faster than they used to. Things you once tolerated now feel loud, invasive, or unnecessary. This isn't you becoming intolerant. It's your nervous system becoming more refined. When you outgrow an old life, your system stops using chaos as fuel. It begins seeking coherence instead. Emotional noise doesn't feel interesting anymore. It feels disruptive. That's not withdrawal. It's regulation. Sign 3. Small talk feels harder. You might find yourself struggling to stay engaged in surface-level conversation, not because you're judging anyone, but because it no longer feeds you. You want depth, meaning, presence. You don't want to perform interest where it no longer lives. This can feel awkward at first. You may wonder what's wrong with you. Nothing is. You're just no longer organized around social habits that once helped you belong. Sign 4. Social circles quietly shift. Without drama or conflict, certain relationships begin to fade. No one did anything wrong. You simply stop meeting in the same place. This can feel sad, confusing, or even guilt-inducing, especially if those connections once mattered deeply. But this kind of separation isn't rejection, it's differentiation. When your inner values shift, your outer world reorganizes to match them. Sign 5. You need more quiet. You start craving silence, not emptiness, but space. Less background noise, less input, less constant engagement. You may turn down music, notifications, or social interaction, not because you're depressed, but because your inner world is reorganizing. Quiet becomes restorative rather than uncomfortable. This is a sign your attention is turning inward, not in a spiritual way, but in a stabilizing one. Your system is recalibrating. Sign 6. Approval matters less. You still care about others, but you no longer shape yourself around being liked. Approval loses its motivational power. You notice how tiring it feels to manage perceptions or explain yourself. Honesty feels lighter than acceptance. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you congruent. You're no longer outsourcing your sense of safety to other people's reactions. Sign 7. Your body speaks louder. You begin noticing your body earlier. Tension, fatigue, subtle discomfort. Signals you once ignored now get your attention. You're less willing to override yourself for productivity, politeness, or obligation. This isn't weakness, it's integration. When you outgrow an old life, the body becomes a primary source of truth instead of something to push through. Sign 8. Momentum isn't enough. Being busy no longer satisfies you. Motion without meaning feels empty. You don't just want progress, you want alignment. You may slow down, even if nothing externally requires it. This can feel uncomfortable in a culture that rewards speed. But your system is no longer fueled by momentum. It's oriented toward depth. Sign 9. Familiar places feel misaligned. Places that once felt like home may now feel subtly off. Not wrong, just no longer resonant. You might feel this in jobs, environments, routines, even cities. It's disorienting because nothing has changed externally. But internally, your reference point has moved. And when that happens, the world rearranges around a new center. Sign 10. The need to prove yourself fades. You feel less interested in explaining who you are, what you're doing, or why it matters. Proving yourself feels unnecessary, heavy, outdated. This doesn't mean you've lost ambition. It means your worth is no longer dependent on validation. You're anchored differently now. Sign 11. Superficiality feels exhausting. You may find it harder to tolerate shallow interactions, performative positivity, or surface-level values. Not because you're superior, but because you've already lived there. Your system wants substance, truth, realness. Anything else feels like noise. This is a sign of maturation, not isolation. Sign 12. Your circle narrows, but deepens. Finally, your relationships become fewer, but richer. You don't need as much interaction, but what you do have feels more meaningful. Resonance matters more than frequency. This can feel like loss at first, especially if you're used to being surrounded by people. But what's actually happening is refinement. You're building a life that fits who you are now. Earlier, I said I'd explain why this phase feels so uncomfortable and how it resolves on its own. Here it is. This phase feels uncomfortable because identity always lags behind perception. You start seeing differently before you know who you are in that new way of seeing, and it resolves not when you figure it out, but when your identity finishes reorganizing around that new perception. You didn't miss anything. You didn't fall behind. You arrived at the exact point where growth becomes quiet. Subscribe for more educational content that helps to raise our collective consciousness. Until next time.